class will be an introduction to the 5 elements and how those 5 elements connect to the 5 senses. And the 5 senses and the 5 elements will be sort of woven together in a yoga flow over the course of an hour. And then at the end of the practice, I'll talk about how each specific part of the practice that we did related to each particular element, and how this way of thinking about your yoga practice can start to help you shift and change what you do when, depending on the time of day, depending on the season, and depending on what you notice about your own particular disposition at any given moment. And so this is a sort of a soft introduction to Ayurveda, which is the sister science of yoga. And so although we won't go into the specifics of Ayurveda, the foundation of Ayurveda is the 5 elements. And the 5 elements are a great way to connect with yoga, but they're also a great way to connect with lots of different wisdom traditions. So it may sort of overlap with other things that you've already studied, because the 5 elements are kind of, they're the real stuff. They're what's here and what we can actually kind of build an actual tangible relationship with. And that's really an important part of our practice, and why I said, take a big inhale, because what you smell, it's happening here in this room. And it's a quick, fast way to connect with the earth element. And the earth element is really good for counterbalancing air and space elements, which tend to be up here and are sometimes associated with states of anxiety, or just sort of being in our heads in general. So as a way to quickly come into body, connecting with the sense of smell and the earth element is a way to do that. And also connecting with your physical body is a really great way to do that. So the practice that we'll be doing is possibly deceptively simple. So there's not a whole lot to it. You won't be getting up and down and doing this pose and that pose and getting this alignment and that alignment, and lots of detail and lots of sort of getting into the nitty-gritty, which happens in some yoga flows and is neither here nor there as far as good or bad. It just depends on what your goal is. And so our goal in this practice is to really move into the state of yoga. And so the practice is designed to kind of take you on this journey through the elements to help unify the senses and bring a calm, relaxed state of presence as the sort of result or benefit, we could say. So we don't have to go far or travel through a whole lot of poses to do that. What we really have to do is corral the mind into a certain areas, into this, in this case, our certain area happens to be a rectangle, and it happens to be made of a rubber material, and it happens to be called our yoga mat, right? So this is the space that we're corralling the mind onto to have a ritual with the 5 elements, with the way that we're moving our body. So it's an internalized ritual in a similar way as in different aspects of yoga tradition, there may be an external fire ritual. We're taking all of that relationship with fire and we're putting it right here, and we're bringing the ritual right into our body, so that one, we can do it anywhere, anytime, any place, without a whole lot of accoutrement, which you can really start to gather over time if you get into developing a spiritual practice. This is a spiritual practice that's internalized and is really meant to connect you with the 5 elements internally, and therefore connect you with your body, and then through your body connect to your heart, and your heart which connects you to divinity, and experiencing that on the inside, like in real time now. So I'll use lots of different sort of tools and tricks and ways of guiding your attention to create a particular experience of yourself through the class. And then at the end, I'll expound upon that as far as why I did what and how it connects you to a particular element. And then at the end of that, I will talk a little bit more about my 40-day program that I do this in much greater detail. But this is a little bit of a taste or a sampling of the type of class that you would get in that program and the type of progress that you could see if we had 40 days of sort of continuing this sort of way of approaching building a relationship with your body and the 5 elements. All right, thank you for listening to my little setup there. We'll get to it now. So we'll start, and for those of you here, I'll be doing a little bit more demo than I normally do, so if you ever need to look up here to reference what I'm doing, you can, but my goal is to give you so many clear cues that you can really keep your attention internalized. So unless you need to look at me to see what to do, or need a reference of my body doing what I'm talking about, then really make an effort to just let your experience be following the cues, because they'll be really clear and simple. So we'll start in a earth body position with your torso relaxing on the floor, your arms sort of framing your face in a way that feels comfortable, and your right knee out to the right. So as you get there, it may take a little bit of negotiating to make your arms and your chest comfortable and to allow your body to settle. And then again, make an effort to bring breath and awareness to smelling. And allow your body to be heavy on your mat. And then next time you inhale, turn your head the opposite direction and move your other knee out to the side. Good, and then settle and take a few breaths there. Good, and then on one of your next inhales, switch sides again. Head turns, leg moves back, it's the other side switches. So this is your initial flow. This is your earth flow. We wouldn't often think of something this simple as being a flow, but I assure you that it is if you inhale and begin the movement, and then take the movement until it's completed, and then rest on the other side with your exhale. So keep moving side to side. And this portion of practice is sort of the initial phase of turning your attention towards yourself and noticing. So as we have this simple task of turning the head and switching sides with the legs, you may notice all sorts of different things happen. Your mind goes and shifts to different subjects, where you could be instead of here, or what you have to do after this. And all you're doing is simply bringing your attention on your next inhale to switching sides again. And then you may notice something else. Your attention drifts towards sleep and your body gets heavy and dull. And none of this is wrong. Just on your next inhale, switch sides. And so the shift that I'm asking for is one that turns you towards your breath and towards observing, witnessing. And to continue to refine the flow, see how smooth you can start to make the movement, so that you turn your head and bring your opposite leg up as high as you can towards your elbow in a smooth, consistent movement. So you might notice, in contrast to that smoothness, if you tend to move fast and jerky or abruptly, or if that movement is connected or disjointed with the breath. And keep moving in this way, and I'll invite you to bring a particular mouth position into place. The tongue flat and broad on the roof of the mouth, the teeth slightly parted and the lips touching. And then, as if you had a hard candy between the tongue and the roof of the mouth, add a gentle vacuum action. And as you do so, taste the mouth. So you're tasting the actual flavor of your mouth now, in this moment, and continue to flow side to side on an inhale and relax on the other side. So this flow could be continuous, one breath, one movement, or you could take a few resting breaths in between. Just notice where you go, how the mind goes in between repetitions, how long in between repetitions do you choose. All of this is information that you're beginning to gather about your current state. So as we move from positioning our body to moving in unison with the breath, we've gone from earth element to water element. And the water element is associated with taste and the mouth. So this action of the mouth is intentional to bring your awareness to taste and the rhythm of your movement. Good. Next time your legs are back behind you, pause with them there and bring your hands under your shoulders and your knees right under your hips, so you'll come to all fours. And our next flow will start on an exhale, so you'll take an inhale in this position, ground the tops of your feet, ground the hands, and as you exhale, bend the elbows and send your forehead towards the mat. And then as you inhale, come back up to all fours. So we'll keep this flow continuous. Every exhale, forehead to the mat. Every inhale, back up to all fours. Keep the mouth position in place. And keep grounding through the tops of the feet. And if your forehead doesn't come all the way to the floor, that's okay. You're just working your way in that direction. Hips towards the heels, forehead towards the floor. And then as you continue to take this simple flow, start to connect your movement and your breath more and more deeply. Every exhale completes right as your forehead comes to the ground. Every inhale completes right as you come all the way up to all fours. Keep the mouth position I detailed in place and breath flowing in and out of the nose. Exhale down, inhale up. Continue your observation of the content and quality of thought that arises without grabbing onto any of it. Just return to the exhale, taking you to the floor with the forehead, hips towards the heels. Inhale brings you back up to all fours. We focus on rhythm and flow with the water element. Begin to observe the emotions present with you now. So some possibilities could be frustration or agitation. Nothing feels quite right. When are we going to get going already? Or it could be anxious feelings or activity in the mind. Just whatever you can become aware of in your emotional body, taste the flavor of it now, along with tasting the flavor of your mouth. Next time you send your hips towards your heels, relax down, exhale completely, and get heavy. And then bring more emphasis to your inhale here, coming in and also down, so that you feel in the belly and the side ribs, laterally and in the back. So big inhales, as much air in as you can, and then that focus on inhale allows the exhale. So don't forget your exhale, but also keep the emphasis on the inhale, bringing air in. So on your next inhale, notice the count of your breath. How long is your inhale? And then how long is your exhale? So it may take a few breath rounds for you to get a good count, but get in about approximate of how long your inhale and exhale is. And then we'll continue the flow from hands and knees and hips to heels, back up to all fours with this rhythm count in place. So however long your inhale was just now, inhale, use that amount of time to come up to all fours. And then as you exhale, try to count and time it so that your hips come to your heels, however long that exhale was. So now we're going for a consistency with the amount of time for the inhale and the exhale to be, and a little bit more detailed of a mapping of the movement to the breath, so that your inhale is lengthened and your movement to come up to all fours slows down. And same thing with your exhale. As you get more in contact with your breath and your breath rhythm, your movement slows and smooths. And then think about keeping the joints really soft. So your hands hold your weight, but you do so with as much ease as possible. Keeping the elbows soft and the shoulders soft. How much can the movement that you're making now embody water and the fluidity of water? In this case, we're just flowing back and forth. Notice if you're searching for sensation or a particular stretch, and see if you can just move simply back and forth. Once you find a place that you can move back and forth with your knees and hands staying in the same place, keep that. Good. Next time you come up to all fours, pause. And then lower your elbows to be where your hands are and walk your legs back behind you. Come to lying flat on your belly. From flat on your belly, bring the tops of the feet to ground behind you and the arms to ground on the floor overhead. And then lastly, bring your forehead to ground. So you'll tuck the chin towards the center of the throat and extend through the back of the crown, and then rest the forehead down. Maintain this position and ground the tops of the feet actively down. And then ground the palms actively down. And then keep making that effort, and breath by breath, find the right amount of effort that you could sustain. If I was like, okay, hold this for 5 minutes, you could maintain it. So find the amount of groundedness with the hands and the feet that's sustainable. And then we'll review bandha, or the engagements of the core that help us contain and move smoothly and easily in our yoga practice. So an action with the tops of the feet begins that, and then see if you can move the front hip bones towards the low rib and gently ground the pubic bone towards the floor. So you're shifting your pelvis slightly forward, and there'll be an engagement in and up at the pelvic floor, at the pelvic diaphragm. And if you're not sure what that means, it's okay. The actions themselves will help that to happen. So ground the tops of the feet, lift the front hip bones. And then you'll move the low ribs that are in contact with the floor towards the front hip bones. And then the ribs in the back towards the back body. So if you notice or feel that your ribs are really pressing into the floor, see if you can soften the arms a little bit to give your rib cage a little bit more freedom to move back. Good. And then again, ground the tops, or ground the hands down, and gently ground the head down, while keeping the mouth position in place that I detailed earlier. Tongue flat and broad on the roof of the mouth. Gentle vacuum between the tongue and the roof of the mouth to vacuum out all the space. Very good. Now hold all this engagement only as much as you had to take the engagement if I said, okay, hold this for 5 minutes. So find that amount of engagement and stabilization, and notice, do your knees start to want to lock out? You start to have pain creeping up in your low back? How can you intuitively shift or adjust the amount of activation where, so that this feels really easeful? There's an equal amount of effort through each of the limbs to press down, and then a containment in the core that you breathe in and down to. Fill the torso with breath from low to high. So now you're breathing into this contained torso with a full inhale, and then an exhale that just happens as much as possible. Really good. Keep all of that going, the mouth position, the breath in and down. And each time you inhale, you'll lift a limb. So on your next inhale, lift your right palm and your arm. And then on your exhale, set it down. And then lift your left palm and arm, and then set it down. Good, and move back and forth between your arms a few times, and find the activation in the lower body that you need, so that you don't have any shift side to side happen as you begin to try to lift the arm. So now we're bringing some of the back body into this core engagement, and finding the right amount of effort to hold the containment through the low body so that you can lift and float the arm. It doesn't have to be a heroic amount of a lift. You're more so feeling at the very beginning of the movement what wants to shift in your torso, and seeing if you can stabilize that through how much you ground the feet and contain the core. Inhale to lift, and exhale to lower. Awesome. And next time you ground your right hand, move down to your right foot and lift and float your right foot. So all 3 other limbs stay grounded down, just the right foot lifts and lowers, and then switch to the left foot. And go side to side in this way between your feet really slowly, and feel how and where to lift from, so that you feel no side to side shift happen in the front of the body. Everything stays weight equally distributed through the front of the body. Just the lift happens from the strength of the back body and the legs. Each lift happens on an inhale, and you lower on the exhale. Mouth position in place. Notice your disposition emotionally. Notice the qualities of your movement. And next time you set your left foot down, move up to your left hand, and then across to your right hand, and then down to your right foot. So now you'll move around your body, each one limb at a time, and really find the stabilization, from deep in the core, so that just the limb that you're moving is all that moves. And keep bringing your inhales in and down. Now add that quality of rhythm. See if you can find again the pace of breath we had when you were moving from hips to heels to all fours. Can you match that inhale and that exhale pace with how you pace the lift and lowering of each limb? So lengthen it out, slow it down, find your motor control, and see if you can find your stability from deep at your center to allow the limb to lift without shifting. Your weight stays equally distributed. Good, keep going with this, and now bring your awareness to your closed eyes and see the darkness behind your closed eyes. And stay conscious of seeing as you move around to each limb. And as you connect to consciously seeing the eyes, also direct your insight, your ability to see through feeling in and down with each inhale, to become more intimate with the way that your body shifts and moves and adjusts with each repetition. So it becomes more advanced by feeling more of what's happening about each movement, and slowing it down and matching the movement to breath. Next time you complete a trip all the way around, exhale and pause and take a resting breath. Deep inhale and exhale. And let your body get heavy. And just notice the sensations present with you now as you bring breath in and down. Ground through all four palms and tops of the feet, so ground through all limbs. And then on an inhale, lift and float your head, and keep your head looking down towards the floor. And on exhale, set your head down. So inhale, lift the head, and exhale, lower the head. Find that same rhythm if you can. And now next time you lift your head, also lift the right hand and continue moving around the body, lifting your head each time you lift a limb. Notice if certain other limbs want to compulsively lift up and keep them grounded down. So all three limbs, besides the one you're lifting, ground down as the head and a single limb lift up. To the legs, see if you can really begin to lift in a way that the glute starts, or the front of the leg starts to come up off the ground. But only if you can do so without shifting. Time you lift and lower your right hand, pause. Take a deep breath in and down. And then we'll move to lift all the limbs next. So ground down first, contained through the core, just in the way that I explained at the very beginning. So the low ribs move back, the front hip bones ground down, head lifts, and then one limb at a time. First the right hand, then the right leg, then the left leg, then the right hand, or left hand lift, and the head's barely lifted. And see if you can find an amount that you could lift, that if I said, oh, we've got to hold this for 5 minutes, you could do it. So where could you back off, but stay lifted? So where can you find more ease or lower a little bit to make this more sustainable? Keep the breath in and come out on an exhale when you need to, when you've reached your maximum. And relax completely. And bring a big breath into your relaxed body. And then when you're ready, inhale and lift all the limbs again and hold for one more round. Again, it's more like you're searching to find the place that's the most sustainable, rather than trying to grin and bear your way through it. See if you can find the place that actually feels doable. So that may mean lowering. Good. And when you reach the completion of your next round, rest. Bring your right arm out to the right and keep your left arm out overhead. We'll move into a movement called the infant roll. So your head will look towards your thumb, and your head and your hand will lift at the same time. And then on an exhale, you'll lower. And the effort here is that you don't see any movement happen in the opposite leg, that there's no compulsive actions happening in the lower body. And just the head and the arm lift and start to reach further and further back, as if you were reaching for something up and back behind you. And that keeps going until eventually you can roll all the way passively with the low body from your back, belly to your back. Then on the way back, the head and hand lift and reach across. Same thing, you're trying not to press or use the lower body. You want your upper body and your head to be what's causing you to roll. So the more you're trying to get your head on your thumb and gaze towards your hand, the more you'll be able to roll without using the lower body. Okay, so it starts with lifting and lowering. You lift and lower to the point where you start to feel compensation happen, or feel the lower body try to press to roll you over. And it's a lot of head. If you feel yourself getting momentum, try to slow the movement down. And remember that rhythm that we established in the water element. Can you lift for however many seconds that was, and then lower. And see if you can open and rotate just little by little with each repetition. Not forcing it, not using the lower body. Keep the mouth position in place. See if you can have an awareness on temperature and texture. So as your hand moves through the air and lifts up off the floor, what temperatures do you notice? Can you feel the air on your hands? On your next inhale repetition, see if you can get all the way onto your back. So kind of just use whatever means necessary to roll onto your back. And it's kind of a two-part deal. The upper body goes and then the lower body goes. Good. And then kind of straighten yourself out a bit. Reach the right arm up and across your body in the overhead space and lift the head like you're trying to put your head on your thumb. Keep reaching. See if you can roll back onto your belly without using the legs. So it's a pretty aggressive movement with the head to get you to roll over. So try that a few times over and back with the right hand now. You come to your belly, switch sides with your arms. So right arm comes overhead, left arm out to the side, head turns to the left. So much of the learning here happens by just kind of struggling through those glitchy points in the movement and kind of figuring out the pattern. So head and arm lift together. Keep looking towards your thumb and reaching the head towards the thumb to open up. When you reach the stopping point, come back to the beginning and take several breaths to see if you can start to roll from your belly to your back without using the legs. Big reach with the hand and awareness on touch and temperature. This movement is revealing places where there's compensatory movement or compensation patterns in place. So when you start to try to use the legs, can you find where to use the upper body to make the movement happen? You've got this when you can really easily roll from belly to back and back to belly with just the upper body. Some ways that the movement might show up or compensations in your movement pattern might show up is wanting to press the head down to lift you up instead of lifting the head up to roll and reach across, or simply just like feeling like there's no more rotation available in the upper back. So this is a movement that's both diagnostic and corrective. So just by doing more of the movement, you'll free up the neck and shoulders and build deep core strength. Good. And then take about another minute or so to do whichever pattern was the weakest. So say it was your left side going from belly to back. See if you can find and identify which one of the ways and which arm is really where you get sort of caught up and can't seem to find your way. as we do this sort of different movement, check back in with your temperament, your disposition, qualities of your thought, the contents of your thought, the pace of your movements, the pace of your breath. And then eventually make your way onto your back. Your mat is, you're centered on your mat again, back to your home base. The air element took us a little out and off to the side, but we're back. So facing upward now, bring the palms to face down and activate through the soles of the feet as though you were standing on your feet. And just like we did with the tops of the feet grounded down, see if you can find an activation with the feet like you were standing on them, toes pointed towards the ceiling, that doesn't lock out or hyperextend the knees. And then lift the front hip bones just as we did on the floor, like you were trying to bring the pubic bone towards the floor, but now this will balance the pelvis in the front. And then bring the low ribs gently down and bring the lowest point possible on your head to be what's in contact with the floor. So all these activations happen to, again, create bandha now here as you're lying on the front, on the back body. So the hands ground down gently, feet stay active, and hold here for a few breaths and feel for the amount of activation that you could sustain. Again, where it's would be nothing if I said, okay, hold here for 5 minutes. And as we hold here and try to find that amount of effort, you'll notice what's habitual at the knees, at the hips, at the hands, the shoulders, the neck, and the head. Good, and once you find that amount of effort that's just right for sustainability, on your inhale, lift and float the head, just maximum of inch or 2. And on your exhale, set your head down. So find that rhythm that we've already established. Maybe it was a 5-second inhale and a 6-second exhale, or whatever your breath rhythm was. Put that into place here. So inhale to lift the head for that many seconds. Exhale, lower the head for that many seconds. And we're really working on motor control of the head so that the whole face lifts towards the ceiling at once. So it's not like you're looking down, your whole head lifts and lowers. And then if you want to advance this movement, you can lift less. So keep the same amount of time for your lift, but lift less. So it'll actually kind of move you slower through the parts that are just crazy difficult. So if you're finding this to be hard, that is common. So really work in the front of the neck and the jaw. If you're not talking like I am, keep your mouth position in place. And see if you can find a way to make the breath more expansive as it comes in and down as you lift the head. Good. Next time you lower your head, relax the feet, turn the head side to side, relax the neck. Let go of any effort. And then bring the head to center again and keep the feet relaxed. Bring breath in and down. And see if you can extend your exhale now to be as long as it could be. So you'll add effort to the exhale. Your inhale will come in and down. You'll add effort to the exhale and then continue exhaling until you're empty, and then even empty some more. Next time you exhale and empty all the way, keep your body relaxed and lift and float your head. And take an inhale and an exhale, and see how long you can hold the head lifted, just barely. Keep extending your exhales and lower your head on an exhale when you're ready. Keep extending the exhales. Empty out completely and begin to add a suspension of breath after your exhale. So exhale completely, empty, empty, empty all the way, and then hold the breath out. Suspend the exhale out. And then let the inhale flood in and down. So now we're moving into the space element. Which is connected to your sense of hearing. So hear the breath and the lengthened exhale, and hear all the sounds in the room. Long exhales, and if you'd like to continue to lift the head for the duration of your suspension, then as your inhale, set the head down with control. Long exhales, suspend the breath out, lift the head. Hold the head lifted for the duration of your suspension. Hold the head lifted as you inhale. Set the head down on an exhale. Good, so keep going with this rhythm. You can take rests in between as of breaths without suspension, and then again exhale, suspend the breath out, lift the head just barely. Hold the breath out with the head lifted. Inhale, keep the head lifted. Exhale, set the head down. So our movements and our actions are getting more subtle. The cues and the directions are getting more subtle and more deeply connecting your action to breath. Keep your attention anchored in and down. Long exhales, suspend the breath out, lift the head. Hold the breath out. As you inhale, keep the head lifted, and then set your head down on the exhale. Remember the mouth position if you've lost it. Keep breath flowing in and out of the nose. Stay connected to your sense of hearing, to open your ears to listen wide. Hear all the sounds in the room. Hear your own breath. Next time you place your head down, relax, release the breath pattern, turn the head side to side. Open and close the jaw a few times. Release any tension that you can from the neck or jaw. And become aware of the amount of effort that you were making for such the small movement. And see if you can just be aware of tension patterns in the jaw and the neck. Possibly even bring your hands up to your neck and jaw and add a little just touch with the hands at the places that feel like they really built heat or felt strain. So just give yourself your own attention in the form of touch and noticing where the effort was and how much effort you did make for such a small thing. Bring the feet flat to the floor and then feet as wide as your mat. And then your arms are just sort of out of the way wherever that is. And on an exhale, let both knees drop to the right. And on an inhale, bring them back up to center. And exhale to the left. And keep moving side to side in this way. And once your movement in the lower body is established, start to turn the head the opposite direction of the knees. Stay connected to your sense of hearing, and this is another moment to get everything all unified and synced up, from your grounded feet to your turning head. Can you sync it up so that you turn opposite of the knees as you exhale, and then everything comes back to center as you inhale. You bring your knees up and your head to point towards the ceiling. Extend your legs long, hip width apart. Activate the soles of the feet as if you were standing on them, and ground the palms into the floor next to your hips. So engage Bandha again. Front hip bones lift, ribs move towards the back body, broaden the upper back, ramp the head, and hold everything really still with the hands grounded and the feet activated. And then inhale, lift and float the head just barely. And keep the mouth position in place. And keep breathing in and down. And we'll hold to your max capacity. The lower body stabilizes. If you need to lower the head a bit more to stop any shaking, you can do so. But we're trying to find a really sustainable place here with the amount of effort that you're making. You can even begin to set the head down and take some of the weight into the floor, but keep the activation in place. And notice where in your body starts to cry out. What's taking on too much load? There's something in my body crying out now. It's my left knee. It really wants to keep hyperextending, but I keep soft bend. Where is it happening for you? In the arms, in the shoulders, in the lower body. Take a deep inhale, and on your exhale, let everything relax. See how quickly you can relax completely. And keep bringing breath in and also down. And scan from the feet and ankles, up the legs, the hips, the torso, the chest, the arms, all the way up to the neck and the head. And as you scan, just take note of the impact of that activation on your body. And that's information, that's the data that you're gathering from this practice, is to learn more about you, not to learn more about yoga. Keep your body heavy, and your eyes can stay open and focus on a single point, or they can close as you feel comfortable. Keep bringing breath in and down, so that your inhales fill your torso completely, and your exhales, you stay relaxed, and your exhales are complete. So we'll have a few moments of rest, and we'll do so in an intentional way. So next time you inhale, bring all of your attention to the space of the midbrain, between the eyebrows, and in. You could even gently look with your eyes in and up without creating any strain in the eyes. And as though you were gathering all of the attention to feel sensation right at the midbrain, take a few deep breaths with your attention there. And with the attention at the midbrain, take a deep inhale, and on your exhale, travel with your attention down through the throat center to the heart center, at the center of the chest. And keep your gathered attention there at the center of the chest. Feel the lungs filling and possibly the heart beating. And keep your attention at the chest. Stay with the sensations of the area of the chest and your heart. And if your attention wanders, or your breath shortens, just notice yourself. Notice your heart. Take another deep inhale to surround your heart with breath, and a complete exhale. And then travel with your attention from the heart back up through the throat, back to the midbrain. And then stay rooted in sensation at the midbrain and connect to this feeling at the soles of your feet and the palms of your hands. And feel yourself from the tips of your fingers to the crown of your head to the soles of your feet as one unified sense. And then, as if you're carrying this quality of awareness with you, gently roll to one side and come up to a seated position. Take your time, and when you get up to seated, bring your hands to your heart in some way, bow the head to the heart. This concludes our guided practice, and we'll conclude it with gratitude. So as though you could inhale gratitude for your breath and your body and your life, fill up, and on the exhale, allow yourself to be cleansed of anything you no longer need. Thank you all for practicing and taking care. I see you. We'll we'll talk a little bit now about the practice that we just did and how each of the portions of it correlated with the elements. Just do your best to remain in your senses now, because that's the place to be. So the earth element and the stability of the floor, and coming down to the floor and feeling as much of your surface of your body in contact with the earth. If you're in need of a dose of earth, you know where to go, down, down to the earth. And this cultivates a sense of stability. So when you're feeling ungrounded or disjointed or out of sorts, coming down and grounding in that way can be really helpful. I have taken many a nap in what I call the splat position, where there's just nothing to do but settle myself. And the earth element, again, associates with your sense of smell. So it's helpful to have a grounding scent sometimes in your practice ritual, if you're into that. And then the water element came in with the sense of rhythm, how we were connecting the movement to the breath. So it started out simple, just move on your inhales. And then we moved into the all fours to child's pose, and that got more and more refined, more and more detailed as your attention started to settle and your body could start to give more detail in the cueing to really ground your attention in something super simple and breath connected. And then bring your attention to the mouth position and taste. And this bind of the mouth is a developmental hack of sorts that is mimicking the mouth position of breastfeeding and helps your nostrils open. So in yoga, we're always balancing Ida and Pingala, our two nadis, and by activating this mouth position, it helps them both open or activate Sushumna, which is a cool way to think about really freeing up the energy channels and allowing the nose to breathe. And then to the fire element, we really focused on containment and bandha. So we use the floor for feedback to find all of the activations that are inside of what's called bandha. And bandha is a way of internally activating deep within that is really held throughout all of your yoga postures. So it's what keeps right relationship between your pelvis and your rib cage and trains a really smart and adaptable core. And so that bandha isn't just happening with your outer core, it's happening with your deep, deep inner core. So the pelvic floor and the activation of the pelvic floor is connected all the way to the activation at the base of the soft palate. So we're starting to make an engagement with the torso so that the pelvic diaphragm, the breathing diaphragm, and the soft palate diaphragm all have this feedback loop of communication. And that's the way that our gut and our heart and our head can start all informing one another as we move through life in alignment, or with all of that information available to us through the way that your body is engaged. So we train bandha in yoga practice, and we challenge bandha in yoga practice in different ways by how we're moving our limbs and what shape we're making, but the center activation is always the same. So finding a place like really close to the floor like we did to really feel the engagement, and then feel the ways that your engagement starts to get compensated for when you start to lift the limbs, is a way to be sure that you're not just moving into more advanced poses for the sake of more advanced poses, but that you really have felt the deep activation that's inside of all of those advanced poses. And then we challenged that even further when we came onto the back and started lifting the head. Oh, why is that so hard? So the neck is a continuation of your deep soft core. So the neck can reveal weaknesses in that deep core, and by working and strengthening the neck, which is developmentally one of the first things we do as children, but sometimes can get a little bit, the pattern can get a little bit messed up if we've been injured or just haven't moved in particular ways. So both the head lift and the arm roll are developmental movements that we're revisiting to try to repattern those engagements so that your core starts to function as designed by our great creator, which is a really good design. So the arm roll was moving us into the air element and freeing up the thoracic spine and freeing up the cervical spine to move in all of its available rotation. And then that also connects with the shoulder and being able to move the shoulder through all of its available ranges of motion. So the air element is the heart and the area of the thoracic, and then also the sense of touch. So I kept bringing your attention to feel the air and connect with the temperature of the room as a way to ground and bring the air element into the ritual. And then we did the small head lifts while holding bandha, and that was to bring in the space element. So bandha and all of that engagement helps us find right spacing inside of the body, and the element of space is associated with the throat and your sense of hearing. So by calling your attention to listen wide and open to the whole space that you're in, and then inviting those more and more subtle head lifts, you're starting to connect into possibly restriction or things that are kind of closing down the throat chakra in this area of the body. And each of the elements coordinates and correlates to the chakras. And by working with each element, you are working with that chakra, but really we would like to have access to them all and in a sense have them communicating with each other, like I was talking about with your diaphragms. So that's a little breeze over how each of those touched on each of the elements. And so if you want to cultivate any particular element at a given time in your life, you could tap back into those aspects of practice, and the way that you're practicing hugely impacts the elemental emphasis that it brings forward. So there's a time for every different kind of practice, but what tends to happen is that left to our own devices, we like to get more of what we already have. And so the fiery people like fiery practices, and they want more fire, and they want it to be hotter and harder and faster and more technical and more fire. And really what may be more beneficial for balance is to have more earth practices or more water practices that start to cool and calm that intensity that the fire element has. Or really creative people love airy, spacey practices where we're really getting into mantra and really getting into the spiritual aspects of practice. And also those things can like spin them out into the thought field and they might never return. And so, you know, having practices that are really repetitive and methodical can be agitating for people dominant with those elements at first, but then it becomes like, grounding and feels more like coming home to the body, which can kind of be the thing that we're neglecting when we feel anxious or overwhelmed. So this is just a few examples of how the medicine of the opposite element is really what brings balance. And so if you're starting to meditate and build relationship with the elements, you begin to intuitively pick up on ways that you can apply this in your life. So say you need a dose of the water element because you're feeling really hot and fiery and overwhelmed. Well, what could you do? You might go water your plants and actually interact with the water element and kind of take your practice and the ritual of your yoga practice off of the mat and out into your life in lots of creative ways. So my effort in the 40-day program that I mentioned at the beginning and that begins soon is that each week you have an earth practice, a water practice, a fire practice, an air practice, and a space practice, and then a sixth practice called embodied elements. And so each practice you're starting to understand more and more about what that element is about, what aspects of practice are addressed by that element, and you're gaining deeper and deeper insights into yoga, yes, but more importantly into yourself and into your own body, because of the way that I'm directing practice, and because the way that I'm inviting contemplation and inquiry as your practice. You start to learn about what's patterning in you, what's trending, what comes up over and over and over again, and then what are the subtle ways that you can shift your movement or your alignment and your activation so that you're not creating so much wear and tear on one particular area of the body while neglecting another area of the body, or which element you need to focus more attention and energy on in your life. And so this happens for 6 weeks. So that's 40 different practices that cycle you through 5 different phases. So the first phase is the restore. So we really work on coming back to the body, calming the nervous system, and restoring our sense of feeling relaxed and at home in the body. And then it moves into align, where I start to get a little bit more detailed, a little bit more coach-like. That really comes out in me. And the alignment and exactly how you want your body to be inside of your postures is detailed through those classes. And then we move into the adapt section, where I address any pain that's coming up. So it's broken up into sections for the head and the neck, the shoulders and the upper back, the hips and the low back, and the feet and the legs, so that what you've noticed in those first 2 phases, you learn corrective strategies for dealing with that pain and possibly getting out of pain using myofascial release techniques and kind of a strategy of corrective movements. You can address what comes up, or sort of find where the cause of your particular pain or injury might be. And then we move into the train section, where once you're all pain-free and ready to get after it, we start to increase the intensity a little bit and move into some harder activations, some harder movements. Everything is, based on developmental movement, so it allows for you to modify everything that you're doing in your home practices. And then the 5th section is connect, and that's really where I bring in more of the teachings on mantra, on meditation, on a relationship with divinity and a higher power, and some of the philosophy that comes in to yoga. So once your body is really stable and contained and pain-free and strong, then we add a little bit of the mystical energy of prana shakti into your practice, and really how you can start to get clear on what's really your value system, what's important to you, and what you want to use all of this newfound capacity and energy for. So that happens over 6 weeks. I also designed it because, yes, in an ideal world, we would commit to 40 days and we would do it. But I'll tell you, my friends, that's not how it goes. We commit to 40 days and we get as far as we get, and we learn as much as we learn, and we reach a stopping point, and for one reason or another, whether it's because of life, because of capacity, because of feeling annoyed with my voice, whatever reason comes up that you don't want to continue it, it's okay. You've learned something in whatever amount you've been able to dedicate yourself to this. And so it comes around again that next spring I offer the same program, and if you join one time, you get to join every time. And so then we'll reassess after some time away from it and try to make another effort at it. And for the time in between, we take the information that we gathered from this effort to make this 40-day practice, and you and I have a one-on-one session. And in that one-on-one session, we determine what's going to be a sustainable and effective personal practice for you to maintain at home. And so my goal is to find something doable and sustainable for you to devote yourself to, so that your practice can go from sort of feeling like you're never quite getting it right, never quite learning enough, unsure which practice to do on YouTube, not clear on if you really want to go to that class, or if you're going to be able to make it to the studio, all of the factors that sort of get in our way of really committing to practice, I've tried to just clear the way and make this program something that my students could really commit themselves to and see progress in over not just one time of 40 days, but for as long as they want to keep practicing yoga. So this is not my first time running it. It's probably my 4th or 5th time running it, so it's something that I've refined over and over again each time that I have students go through the program, and it will sort of continue to be that. It will continue to improve and refine, and if you join once, again, you're welcome to join as many times as your heart desires until you get sick of me. Does anyone have any questions? Let's hear. Cool. Thank you. I appreciate your effort, and I hope that you learned something, and I really enjoyed practicing with you.